Hi, this is Kevin Kuja of fierceandmighty.com. Relentlessly push yourself forward. And here we are on a snowy day in Connecticut, the day after Valentine's Day. And something that's been rattling around my head a little bit, I would say, over the last couple of days, that I thought I might have at least some perspective to share to the discussion on, had to do with the Little League issue that's going on right now with the Jackie Robinson West Little League team from Chicago. So, if you're not familiar with the story, Jackie Robinson West is an inner city Little League team from Chicago that ended up being the national champions for the United States in this past year's Little League World Series, then to lose in the finals. Um, the controversy has arisen over the fact that Little League has conducted an investigation that has shown that coaches and even some of the district level in Illinois had, for lack of a better word, gerrymandered what the district lines were for the kids within that group so that they could pull better players into the group. So, Little League, having been a Little League coach here for a little while, Little League is very particular about how exactly those districting lines work and the pool of kids that you're able to pull from. Because they're basically trying to set a similar playing field for all the different teams and all the different leagues and all the different districts that rise their way up. If they want to make it to Williamsport to play in the Little League World Series. Now, there's tons of leagues that are out there that are much more about open competition. Kids can come from anywhere, AAU teams. I mean, there's plenty of that, but Little League is very particular about probably being a little bit more, not even a little bit more, maybe a lot more participation based about who can come in and then who can sort of rise up through the ranks of Little League. Um, so from that standpoint, right, I've already seen some people debate about, well, I don't understand why it's a big deal. This is the death of competition in America. This is just the wimping out of America by, people getting upset about the fact that this team is being stripped of its national title because of this particular rule. Now, the reason I feel like I can add a perspective on this is really twofold. So, I worked 4 years as a corporate ethics officer. I'm still at the same company, just in a different role now. Pretty big company. We're a Fortune 50 company, so I did that role for two different divisions. One for a division of the company for a year that was probably about 45,000 people, and then where I am now, which is 32,000 people, international, all around the world. And I've been a youth baseball coach now, specifically a Little League coach, probably for, so I'm trying to think, as old as my oldest nephew is. I mean, probably like 7, 8, maybe as long as 9 years now. I kind of lose track of these things after a while. So between those two things, it's made for really interesting discussion, and it really also started to get me thinking just generally about the state of youth baseball in the U.S. because I just read a great piece written by Andrew McCutcheon. I'm trying to think of the name of the website, and I'll be sure to get it linked up here in a second. But also about the widening financial gap, about why you don't see as many inner city kids playing baseball anymore. So I guess from one of many of a myriad of angles, I guess the problem I have with it is that, I mean, we're talking about 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. And I think at that age, you do have to teach them value of competition. You do have to show them that there are winners and there are losers, and not everybody just kind of walks home with a medal or a trophy. In the league that I'm in, for Little League, I had coached a AAA team, which is one level down from majors. So our kids were 9, 10, and some 11-year-olds. And, we made it to the championship game, which was pretty awesome. Lost. Got a trophy as the runner-up and everything else. But, those are the hard lessons to go that far and to end up losing. And we don't have the kind of league where every kid walks home with a trophy or a participation title because this is something that needs to be learned. But at the same time, I've become an extremely big believer that just because you have a goal to reach or just because you have something you need to get to, a lot needs to be paid attention to how you actually go about getting there. At least for me. I mean, if you have values, if you have principles, just for yourself, whatever they may be, that can be so easily compromised in the name of, just winning a competition. That's a problem. I mean, for the company that I work at, it's a highly, highly, highly competitive industry, right? It's aerospace and defense. There's a lot of money that's on the line, but at the same time, we as a company are really firm on the fact that you can't just sacrifice everything in the name of winning a deal. And if we have to choose between compromising principles on these sorts of things, or winning a deal, we're not going to compromise. I mean, it's just kind of that simple. So, I'm not sitting here in my capacity in that role anymore, right? I'm not a spokesperson on behalf of the company in that role. Always very important caveats to make in these sorts of things. But, that's just kind of how it is. And so when I think about it in relation to this Little League, right? Most kids playing Little League are not going to be making it to the major leagues, right? So what are you doing in this? You're trying to find an opportunity for these kids to have a positive outlook, to learn some competition, to get out and play sports, to learn teamwork, to learn camaraderie, to learn how to push through adversity and everything else, right? These are the kinds of things that are going to hopefully stay with them for the rest of their lives because you're, getting a chance to impart upon them these things at a young age when they're very impressionable about this, right? I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how unbelievably satisfying and meaningful it is to me personally to work with the kids who kind of have a struggle at the beginning of the season and work their way through. So a perfect example is this past season. We had one kid on our team. He hadn't played like the past year, and in talking to his parents, like the only goal that he had was getting a hit. And he ended up the season with a bunch of hits, making a bunch of plays, making really good plays in the field, improving over the course of the season. I mean, to me, that's massive. I don't know. I mean, maybe in the end he thought it was just kind of cool, but to me, that meant everything in the world to me as a coach. That's the most amazing thing. More than the titles, the trophies, the medals, all-star games. I mean, those are nice, but it's just not the same as that. And I think that's what I worry about of if you end up playing such a high premium on winning and only about winning and only about everything else. Really? I mean, that's all you got? None of the process about what it takes to get there and what you learn along the way means anything? So, I'm kind of riffing at this point on this particular point, but I tell you, I mean, if you just don't give a damn about the steps that kind of get from point A to point B and everything else, then I just don't know what to tell you because it is important. And it just pains me to no end to think that these kids ended up now having this stripped from them. I mean, in the end, for the Jackie Robinson West team, I feel just the worst for the kids. I mean, just because they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. They went out and they played. And they played hard and they won baseball games. And in the end, it's the coaches and the district people that let them down. Now, the Andrew McCutcheon piece makes some interesting points about those same coaches might also be the people that are, paying for their shoes for them and picking up league fees and doing all sorts of things and taking the games and making sure they have an equipment, right? So I get that, right? I mean, and that's really important because baseball has become this kind of game with this widening financial gap. And I've seen it myself. You see how much harder it is for a lot of these kids in the inner cities to have the facilities and the coaches and the equipment and everything else, and the chances and the places to play, whereas the team that I coach is in a fairly nice suburb of Hartford, where, these things aren't a problem. Going and playing these tournaments, having the money, having the facilities, having the access, having all of these things, it's just not nearly as much of an issue. Oh, look, I got mail. So I guess what really made me start to think about this is the fact that, if you really want to go play, winning is the most important thing, and you want to go and play in these super tournaments, you go ahead, play some AAU baseball. I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's very high-level baseball, super competitive. Knock yourself out. I think sometimes I wonder about the oversaturation of baseball for kids who do that. But, if you love it and it's not work to you, then that's fine. It's also a sport that's pretty much ripe for overuse injuries if you're doing too much of it. It's sort of a one-side-of-the-body dominated sport, but I mean, I'm going on such an unbelievable rant and ramble right now, but I guess the bottom line is this. If in the end, that the only thing that you really care the most about is sort of trying to build some championship team, and winning's a good thing, and it's a very fine thing that kids need to learn about, and they need to learn about competition because That's what happens in the real world. But if you also teach them it doesn't really matter how you get there. You might not say it, because in most times leadership really comes down, it's not the things you specifically say, it's the actions you have and the actions you model and the behaviors and the attitude. Then that's what kids are going to take away from the experience. And that's really my worst, fear for kids who go through this, and especially for the Jackie Robinson West kids, right? Because you might have just people out there calling them cheaters. These are 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. They didn't cheat. The people who put the team together certainly seems like they probably did to do this together. But, they're going to take away from the fact that, that's what was most important. That was what was most important. Not all the other lessons, not everything else. And that would just break my heart. And because, truthfully, I believe I would love to see more kids playing baseball. More kids seeing the opportunities. It's just a game with a pace and then everything else. You just have a different way and a chance to bond with your teammates. The time you spent in the dugout. I mean, there's a lot of standing around time, but there's also a lot of other time of just the kids getting a real chance to just get to know each other and to support each other in a way that I think that's just different from some other sports. So, at some fundamental level, I think we just really need to figure out what's most important. And if people want to come off and say I'm being Pollyanna about this, or that, I am one of the people that is, supporting the wimping out of America, fine. Knock yourselves out. You're dead wrong. And I'm not going to change my approach on these kinds of things, because I've been out there, I've seen these kids, and I've seen what it's like to go out there and coach. And I've seen what it's like to see kids from the inner cities, have really tough times trying to find these things together. But in the end, you just can't throw all that out the window in the sake of, wanting to win more tournaments, wanting to win more games and everything else. Because in the end, like I said, 99.99% of these kids, they're never making it anywhere close to even the minor leagues, let alone the major leagues. So you're just setting them up for some really screwed up values to me. Going forward. And to me, in the end, youth sports teaches a lot of those things better than almost anything else at a time that is probably much more important than any other time. So that's just what I think about it. I'm just heavily influenced by the fact that, having done the role that I did before, I know what happens, and I've seen what happens when people just don't get focused on the steps to get from point A to point A to B. All right? They just... when you have that kind of thing and you have that kind of culture, nothing good comes of it. Ever. Kevin Kuja, fierceandmighty.com.